Good afternoon, everyone on YouTube Live. We're coming to you today. Just give me a second here to get hooked up and looking forward to our discussion today. Hello and welcome to GovSchool. Thank you for joining us today on YouTube Live. If you can, just click that button down there right below our video and subscribe. And if you at the end of the session, if you like what you hear, make sure you say a thumbs up. It's always helpful to allow us to reach other individuals as well. We'll get started here in just a minute. Let's focus into our class. If you're in our live Zoom class, I'm going to at the very end allow you the opportunity to ask some questions immediately after we go off YouTube Live, and just be aware for privacy reasons. If you do actually interrupt or discuss anything, it is recorded forever and maybe not the best. So wait till we finish to the end, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have today. And so this is a series that we're doing. Basically, I call it our summer school at Gov Directions. A lot of you on vacation. This is the time of year for us to do some education. We like to update our videos, and so I've got some tools here to help me do that. And so this is now, I think I've done 8, 9, 10. This will be my 12th session, and I think I'm about halfway through. And I'll share with you at the end of it what we're going to do is I'm going to provide access to a document that you can then take and basically is a memory document that you can hand off to you, and you can drop it into either any of the AI tools that you use, and it'll give you all this knowledge um, that you can then take with you and use it in the future. How about that? And so this is a new thing with technology. This is just so great. I mean, so very fortunate to be living in a where we have all these tools at our fingertips and allows us to really become who we want to become. And that's important that we are to do that. Now, if you take anything away from the day, I want you to take away the understanding that we really are enthusiastic about what we do. We really like working with you. If you call in, hopefully you get us in a good mood and we're able to help you out and to assist you. So always just reach out to us. We really do enjoy. We are now in our 28th year as of July 1st, and I'm very appreciative of all those who have put their trust into our corporation and our organization. Over 140,000 of you have registered in some capacity, and we certainly appreciate that. All of you hopefully being successful in government contracting. So we learned early on there wasn't just the fund, which was a big problem when we started. The aggregation market space itself was somewhat difficult to get. I mean, back when I started, we were tracking. They just came out with these things called fax machines, and I think they've been out, but we just didn't have access to them. And the documents would come to us, and we'd have 40, 100 pages coming across the fax machine to learn about a bid. You usually learned about it 2 weeks too late, and it was just a mess. Now, 5,000 calls for business proposals every single day are posted on our website, and the tools we have. And now we have this new Agora Marketplace by GovDirections, Agora by GovDirections, and it's going to even open it up more because there's still probably 40,000 different agencies that do not have access to tools to allow them to broadcast their procurement. And so we're trying to reach out to that crowd and to really help them understand how to go about reaching you and with the whole concept of the theory of the firm. Try to mention that every single session because that's how we engage with public and private sector organizations as someone who has a subject matter expertise in a particular area. And you bring to the table something that they're actually looking to acquire, and you want to present yourself in the right way. And that leads us to the actual writing part of it, not only finding understanding what you're looking at, but then how do you respond back. And so today in lesson 2, I'm going to talk to you about the technical approach. Technical parts, technical writing is very important. You need to practice it. It's built on the concept of the ABCs: accuracy, brevity, clarity, and you need to make sure you follow those. It becomes your responsibility when you're responding back to a contracting officer to tell them exactly what you can do and to be factual about it, accurate, to be brief and clear. is the concepts of that. There's a book that I always kept on my desktop, and living in college, and maybe not so much these days, but I think it's available freely on the internet. But I think it's Strunk and White, and it's sort of the elements of style and how you write. I've always learned, if you find yourself using a lot of words, and you're using too many words. Okay, so don't use what words that you don't need. And that's sort of the first rule, I think, of technical writing. But here today, what I'm going to do is to show you to help you understand the problem before you try to sell the solution. Make sure you tell them that you understand what they're asking. And every single proposal that I respond back, you start off with a good cover letter. That's always helpful, and then to start to peppering them with the things that you're going to talk about and how you are the best selection, and pay attention to the evaluation criteria. And to then moving into the actual response, past when you summarize what you're going to tell them as a overall approach to your response. But then the very next part is tell them how what your understanding of what they're asking for. The project understanding, and that's how you start off with your technical approach. So whenever you're writing, just remember that um, and you're responding to a bit, that you're really trying to reach the evaluators. These are the folks who are the gatekeepers of the organization, who are going to get you through to the next phase. And that's an important understanding. So you're trying to build confidence in them, the contracting officer or whoever's doing the evaluation, that you know what you're talking about. Okay. And oftentimes they're willing to take risk on price, paying you a little bit too much, but not willing to take risk on seeing whether or not you know what you're talking about. And you got to present yourself in the right way. So they usually write uh, a request that you explain to them, the technical part of it, what they're asking for, and how to actually respond to them. And so 30% to 50% usually is going to be the part of evaluation criteria. And most people really focus in on the price, and when you should be focusing in on the technical approach that you're actually going to use to achieve the objectives they ask you to achieve. So because at 50%, you can come in and have the highest price and still win. It's important that you really start thinking about the math of it, the weight. So it's free. Sometimes I'll see it as much as 70%, and that's once again because the contract officer wants to know that you understand how to do the work. And so the things that they're looking for in this particular section is, do you understand what they need? Demonstrated understanding. Do you have sound methodology? Has it been proven? You've done this before. That's past performance. But here's the methods that I use and how I accomplish my objectives you're seeking. And I've done this everywhere. And in I think I always I have a class on this as well. Just one of specifically the two most powerful words in a technical proposal, and that is for example. Okay. Using the words for example, I can show you how I've done this. It just adds so much credibility to your proposal. So if you ever have the opportunity to step in and add that paragraph to start off with, or the part of a paragraph, then you want to increase your score on that significantly every time. How have they done the work like this before? That is the for example, yeah. And can they start on day one? Are you ready to go, or do you have to? A lot of times I'm writing a particular bid for someone who doesn't really have everything in place now, and they would need like a 90-day period to really ramp up, and that's going to hurt them. But it can be done, and that's important that you do that, and that your transition, that you have readiness. I actually talked about that this morning in my classes. We're doing 11 a.m. in the morning, 3 p.m. in the afternoon this week. Except for Friday. I'm going to actually change that Friday. So if you're thinking about coming at 4 p.m., excuse me, 4 p.m. this week, if you're thinking about coming Friday, I'm going to reschedule that. So be aware of that. Um, and so they want to know, you have to be ready to do something. So go ahead and start planning on winning, and how are you going to transition the process? And be prepared. What if something goes wrong? How are you going to solve that? These are the kind of things that really speaks to the fact that you're ready to go, and you know what you're doing, and the contracting officer can count on you because you're prepared, and that's important, because what they want at the end of the day is a low risk. The last thing I want to do is, if I'm a procurement officer, is to step before city council and say, you know what? Told them that Mark's company was the best company for this project, and I was wrong, because they don't know what they're doing. And that just kills their credibility. They don't want to have that happen. they can stand up there all day long and somebody say, "Did you pay them too much?" And they'll say, "Well, we did this and we did that. We feel like it's a good value," and everybody believes them. But whenever if they can't defend your work, then that is just it's just not good news for you. So there's three core components of every technical approach. We're going to talk about those, and those are basically demonstrated understanding, sound methodology, and then that you're ready to go. And don't just tell, always prove, show, use for example. They prove your claims when you make those claims. Sorry. Here we go. Here are the three parts: understanding, methodology, differentiators. Okay. Um, So when you understand it, basically you just restate it in your own words. Don't just restate it verbatim from what they told you. Okay, put it in your own words. Here's what I understand you're saying. Don't just copy and paste what they said. That's not really what they're asking for. They want to, and it could be in slightly different, in your own words, and it's just proof. So this is the way I do things in this field. Your method, and that's also a part of your management plan. How you would structure your team, how do you make things happen? This is how you're going to accomplish those goals. Your methodology, step by step, how you will deliver. I have a process, what the type of work I do in organizational analysis. I come in, I interview, and I gather information, then I go out and gather data on the internet, then I go out and in other places. Back then, I would actually just order the budgets of governments and then I go through and I analyze seven different organizations. And so I've got a step-by-step method, and that strengthens my the evaluation of my work proposal because it is very specific approach and process, and it's demonstrated. I've done this in so many places. And then you also want to identify your risk and mitigation. So as I go along, the risk that is this government, I'm going to pull eight, but maybe if one of them doesn't have the data that I need, then I'm going to add a ninth one or a tenth one. How will I address that if there's not a direct match? Sometimes I have to explain how we're going to crosswalk information so I'll avoid any risk. So I'm going to lay out that out. Potentially, all of these are going to be in specific parts of the actual technical documents. You get back to them, even a section for risk and mitigation. Any differentiators, you're going to talk about those, why you have the knowledge that they need in the tools and you got special certifications that you might have, the key personnel, what their qualifications are. And then, of course, how are you going to control the quality so that what you do accomplish has the right information, they can rely on it and push that forward. So the three parts of every technical approach there are understanding management, method and risk, a differentiator in quality and control. Always in each step here, open with a clear understanding statement. So you'll start off with your executive summary. You'll have technical, and sometimes I call it methods. Sometimes I call it technical methods, but an area, or sometimes you'll even say understanding of request. Okay, and generally the format of the proposal will tell you how they want you to word that. Pay attention to that. Okay. In this section here, you're going to restate what they're asking for, but in your own words, not in the statement of words or the scope of words there. That's a play on words by itself. Yeah, reference the agency specific mission and why this contract matters to you. Okay, a lot of times sometimes I'll come in after there's been some sort of study and they have the study published. Make sure you read the study, pull parts out of that study. Look back at the budget. The reason why they're building this new building is because they've done a survey of the community and they feel like they need a new building for potentially a health area or maybe even animal control, whatever it is. And then, referencing that and some of the information that you've learned in newspaper articles and so forth really does matter in your contract. Identify the key challenges that the agency is actually facing, and so that the contract itself will address what they're trying to do. A lot of times they understand. Sometimes you can throw in, specifically when you're responding with an RFP to an RFP, you're able to throw in and I know you asked for this. I want you to know that last time this was asked for, this is what we ended up doing with it. Okay? Give them some examples there. This section, I should always convince the evaluator you have read every word of the solicitation. Don't dance around the request. And yeah, just make sure you address it. Okay. Pro tip here: make sure you reference any sort of documents what I just mentioned, the strategic plan that they have, the budget that they have. Read the budget. You can get all these things online these days. Used to you couldn't, and now it's all there. It's just really helpful information, and it just shows that you care about the organization as a whole, and you become a part of that. Most times, these RFPs that you respond to. A small, medium-sized organization is going to go maybe come to the market with two or three strong RFPs every year, or bids. And this is a major undertaking for most of those organizations. So they want you to take it seriously. They have taken it seriously. They have multiple people typically involved in the preparation of the documents and the discussion items. They've gone before the community to get the support and get the money to pay for it. So they want you to value that. Describe your method step by step. Okay, break it down. And don't be, sometimes nowadays with the tools that you have, you can actually do some graphical images and to help them understand. But also make sure I was using one of those today, and I had to step back and then I looked at the graphic and it wasn't necessarily the best flow. But it needs to make sense. Evaluators respond very well to visuals, so use those visuals and be creative. Okay, every step in your methodology should map to a deliverable in the statement of work. Okay, and so that's important. Don't just throw things in there that don't really have any rhyme or reasons. And sometimes, they will do that. So I refer to it as taming the dragon. So make sure you do include that information in a method that is tied back to their statement of work. They can't measure anything else. So you're actually doing yourself a disservice whenever you do that. Okay, give them too much information. Um, this should go in without being said. Back every claim with evidence. I mean, you won't if you're going to hire somebody to do your work, you want to have some sort of proof. And the strangest thing the strangest question I get it all the time, believe me, is Mark, I don't have any past performance. What do I do? I'm like, what are you talking about? Okay. All right, well, don't give me that. Okay, you have been doing your work for years, most likely. You decided to start your own business, and what you're telling me really is that I don't have a contract yet. That's different. Okay, nobody starts off with a contract. You start off with a business idea. Okay, and the business idea is backed by solid understanding of what you want to do and accomplish. And if it isn't, then you're not going to, no matter what you do, you're not going to win at it. Sorry. You can't just create something. I can't just go out there and become a veterinarian. It doesn't do any good. I don't have the credentials. And so I got to build you got to get a capability. You got to claim. I've got training. I've done these projects as a sub. I worked for my work. I worked for Dr. Condry, and he was my mentor. And I was so fortunate to be able to work for him in my career, and I learned from him, and then I can actually trade off his knowledge, and so that's important. So side examples, pull that in. So past performance itself can be contracts. Now I've done 400 contracts in 36 states, so it's a lot of things I can pull to, and I get very specific in that. So I'm going into Tennessee and bidding, and I'm pulling out a Tennessee project that I worked on, and so that's there. And but it also, if I didn't, it would be another city in another state. So there's at least a city, there's city to city. So there's commonality there. Right. So make sure that past performance is an example that can tie to that actual contract that you're responding to. Always speak about your qualifications. Be prepared to sell yourself, folks. Get those. And I talked about making sure your resumes are all lined up and prepared in a way that you're trying to sell the company and not individuals. And have that there. That's important that you have some sort of systematic approach to it. That if you have clearance levels, what are they? Any relevant certifications of all your staff? Understand that the organization wants to see that. Reference proprietary tools, platforms, methodologies with proof. Give them examples of how you've done things. We have a specific method that we use in our organizational analysis, and we have a place on the web where they can actually go and take the test and see how it works. And so that's the kind of thing that you want to include in there. And then concrete evidence, always else, will beat a confident assertion. Just say, I am the best. Well, that's not always the case. So the reason why you are the best because you've done a very good job at this proposal back in 2023, and it was received by 7 council members. They voted to approve it, and they have funded it to a tune of $2 million. So give them some evidence every time you speak to something you have had success with. And step four, address risk and your specific mitigations. This is forbearance. The concept of when things go wrong, believe me, they go wrong. Okay, so you got to be prepared. And I'm not one who just shies away from things. You got to say, okay, calm down. Let's get this fixed. This is how we're gonna fix it, and we're used to this. This is probably the only time you've experienced it, but as contractors, we've experienced this before. This is how we're going to handle it. There's going to be an escalation process. There's going to be, you identify 2 to 3 actual risks that can happen in that contract. And then you're going to state specifically how you will mitigate it. And then you're going to show the evaluator that, you thought about it. And that's important. And because the last thing I just reiterate over and over again, the last thing an officer wants to do is to go before city council say we weren't prepared for that. I don't know what happened. That just kills their credibility. So you got to be prepared. And there's always going to be some extenuating circumstances. Sometimes, like for example, when COVID hit, a lot of us had contracts out there with no really process of of stopping the contract or suspending the contract or addressing it, and a lot of contractors lost, big time. And because you got to have plans for that. Now you actually see some of that written into a lot of the languages, and now you can address them. But agencies fear risk more than anything else, and so you go into it proactive, and try to control it. It builds confidence in everybody whenever you're able to talk through that. Um, and for goodness sake, never panic. Okay. Step 5. Graphics. This is the coolest thing about technology. AI, if you ask me, gives you all these great tools, and I know a lot of them. You can just tell you a funny story, but I was doing the graphic for my daughter the other day, and I showed her something. She goes, "Oh, that looks AI generated," and so I went back and I said, "Well," to the system, I said, "Well, my daughter said this looks AI generated," and the system came back and said, "Well, we can make some slight." I forget what he called it, some slight imperfections to the graph, so it looks more human generated. Okay, so I thought that was funny. I know I have that dad's sense of humor, but it's basically saying we'll make it look like bad, so it'll look human. Okay, just don't pay attention to the graphics, use them in the right way. Don't overboard because some of them can come in there really just go overboard, and you have to tame the dragon, pull it back, and say, "Hey, listen, we want this simple in a business proposal, even maybe take out all the colorful parts of it and make it black and white." So bring it back to reality. It's not a meme, okay? But a graphic, and it's to be honest with you, and this is something I teach in my graduate school class. One graphic is worth 500 words. It really is, and so catch their attention and use it the right way. I can really start reading. I don't want a graphic up front, when I'm reading a proposal, but by the time I get to page 3, it would be helpful to kind of start seeing some flow charts or organization charts that kind of speak to me in a different way. Communication is really important. In fact, I spend out of 11 classes at a graduate school level, I spend 2 of them on communication, and that's how important your style of communication is. It's the most important part of writing and preparing technical documents specifically. Everything I look at and read, I should be able to instantly tell a story of what I'm doing. Okay, and that's important. Quantify proof points, and know and help them with that understanding. Okay, so if you're on time, to tell them what percentage time you're on time. Our daily alert, 99.89% of 1 billion alerts have been delivered. That's a lot. Okay, so a lot. Um, and believe me, when they're not delivered, even that 1/10 of 1%, I get calls. It's just amazing. On-time delivery, on 47 prior contracts, you met the dates. If it's a 4-month contract, we'll come in a day, usually a week ahead of time. That's important, and to the contract, and keep them always apprised when you actually win the contract too. Stay on top of that. When you tell them something, make sure you fulfill it. Okay. Every graphic, every graphic needs a caption. Okay. Don't just put a picture in an image in a proposal. Oh gosh, that's a good way to get a B or C out of Mr. Knowles' class. I guarantee you that. Graphics always need an explanation. Okay? Even whenever it clearly speaks to you, it needs the caption. Okay? So make sure you do that. And as a pro tip, you see how we got a call out box here? Use them. Call out boxes are so cool in a proposal. And just call attention to something that's very technically difficult sometimes to understand, but take a step back and make it easy to understand in a call out box. And then they'll appreciate that, and you'll get bigger points. Don't just put something random like "Look how good looking we are," or something like that. Don't do anything, but something specific that's technical that really makes sense as part of the proposal itself. Sometimes I'll see quotes in there that they're questionable. feel good kind of quotes. And but if it draws in something that they're seeking for you to actually provide this evidence of, like 98.7% uptime is a key fundamental part of our business model, and that's a good call out. So that's something specific. And the color schemes, make sure that it fits your marketing, your branding in the right way if you're using those, but also make sure that whenever it's copied, it can be copied. Okay. And so it's not a dark on dark or something like that. Now, these are some things that you want to avoid. Okay. And these are just common mistakes. I see them all the time. I've written down here. Um, the number one by far is copy and paste in the statement of work, as you understand. Okay. Evaluators just get frustrated. Why are you bothering me with your time? You're not getting this contract. That just is probably the worst thing. Don't do that. Okay. Uh, rephrase it and write it in your own words. Use your own methods. Writing when you're using words like that are we will kind of language. Okay, buy the book. I think it's free on the internet these days, but it's like $1.90. It's shrunk and white. Okay, the elements of style. How to write. Okay, don't use we will. If you see, there's some words I'll just search real quick just to make sure I don't do it or the AI that I'm using doesn't do it. That's one of them. Okay, you want to make it something active. Okay, ignoring the management approach section. Yeah, that's just something that's no, no. So forgetting to put in there an approach that you take, and also give them an organizational chart, just kind of showing you how you're going to make it. Your management actually does work. It's 25% of your score. So you want to get the high score on your technical score. Okay. And just remember, it's typically more valuable to tell them and get the score on management than it is to get the score on price. So you want to get that done. Submitting a proposal with no graphics, dense text proposals score lower on average. This is a case, except but you got to know your audience too, okay? And if it's just going to be a 4 or 5 page response, this rule would not apply. That's not a mistake there. You want to give them text. But if it's a 100 page response, then you need to give them some breaking points in your communications process and make sure you use some graphics. And that could actually be, color, not necessarily some image, but also color and ways to call out and things of this nature. And bolding, don't overbold. I can tell just about any AI proposal that comes across my desk, and like anybody else these days. So don't be that person. Take some time to move out those underlines and those blues and the 2.1s and 3.1s. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Everybody's turning in the same proposal. Proposing to hire key personnel after a contract award. I want to hire up. I'm gonna give you evidence of something in the future if you just hire me. Okay. Doesn't work. Not addressing the risk. Okay. That is by far the number one way to grab some points that we fail to do. Think about you've been doing your work. That's why you're here. And it's important that you help them understand what can happen, okay, in that process. So your plan when you leave here today, open up with a strong understanding statement. So when you have read and absorbed the statement of work, that is by far, get used to it, write it out. You can actually start framing a template, how you're going to do this. You're going to speak to it. Okay. Map your methodology step by step. Always tie it back to the statement of work. Sometimes I'll do a matrix. One side is what they're asking for, one side is my answer, but then I don't leave that in the table and I don't leave that in the report. I eventually merge it out so that it flows together paragraphs. And the other thing I just cannot stand is all these bullets. I mean, I open up some of these RFPs and it's just like they've been shot through by shotguns. It's like all these bullets. I'm like, and even my AI wants to write for me. I'm like, get rid of the bullets. Write the way you would want to them to really talk to you. And nobody's talking to individuals with a lot of bullets. Okay, but map your methodology step by step. It really helps out. Back every claim with a concrete example. Use the words, for example, the two most powerful words in any proposal. I guarantee you use for a proposal, you're going to go up 4 or 5 points. Okay. Address 2 to 3 specific risk and your proven mitigation strategy. This is helpful. Easiest one at all is when something goes wrong, who gets called? How do you get in touch with them? That's an easy one. But then you might have other ways to other things that you have to worry about too. What happens when somebody doesn't, the city council might have an issue or something. You don't want to go overboard with that, okay? But you want to have the thought process there. And then, of course, add some graphics, org charts. Get a good org chart. That's another thing that's now turned out to be something simple these days with technology and helpful. But you don't have to name every single person in your organization. You could name roles. I mean, everybody has lean organizations whenever they first come into market and first open up. Governments understand that. But what do you do? How do you reach out? When do you subcontract? When you don't subcontract? So that the process flow, the organizational charts, they help them at least show that you thought about it. Okay. And that gives them confidence that you can deal with those. And quantify. Okay. Page number, things of this nature too. And always double check to make sure you're within the I've talked about this in an earlier session, but that you have met the format of the proposal, that you're not giving them too many words. If they tell you they want a technical approach that's 2,000 words or less, then you just give them that. Don't give them 3,000. That just is a waste of your time. They're going to rule you non-responsive, and you'll be out. But here are your technical approach plan for any RFP that you respond to. So as we summarize today, I want to thank you for coming to our session. I will be on again tomorrow at 4 o'clock, but of course, I just told y'all Friday I will not be. So I'm gonna reschedule that one Friday. I'm gonna watch this soccer game. Sorry, but yeah, same play. And we have daily alerts. Make sure you register for those daily alerts. We cover all state, local, and federal governments, as well as Agora Marketplace now is open for contractors to reach out to each other. And you haven't used that, the Agora Gov Directions link is on the web on your page there. Open up and see how it's working. All the bids posted there and all the listings are completely free for you to engage with each other. It's a public market space, and of course the old REIT term. So it's there. All 50 states, state and local. In every state, we cover, of course, Canada and Mexico now, and most of the information on our website, some 80% is completely free. So no paywall. So you should go in there and do that. And I told you earlier, at the end of these sessions, we'll be broadcasting an ability to download all of this knowledge in basically in a handoff document. If you understand, it's basically I tell somebody when I think I was maybe 12, 11 or 12, I used to sell moss and pine cones to folks when they were traveling to Florida. And I've always been an entrepreneur, but now I'm selling my memory. So it's kind of funny. It's how it all works and how it comes together. But it's just knowledge that I gained over time. And we're able to trade that off. We hand it off to you, and then you don't have to go through all the hard knocks sometimes. And that's just a great way to I think pass along. And that's an important part of life. But we've been here doing this for now since 1998. We're on our 28th year. And as mentioned, those daily alerts, now we have sent over 1 billion of those alerts. And we're so proud of that. We appreciate you using our services. So make sure you sign up if you haven't. And with that, we're going off YouTube, and I will stay here just for a second to answer any questions that you might have.